Hi again, everybody. This is the Bricks and Bleachers podcast. All things Chicago Cubs in under 10 minutes. Cubs have finished with the same record now 2 years in a row. We'll talk about why this year's team was better than last. Not even 48 hours away from the final pitch of the final Cubs game, and we're already seeing some coaching changes. We'll tell you who's out and preview the postseason as well. Cubs dropped Sunday's contest with the Reds at Wrigley Field, 3-0 in 10 innings. The loss ensured the Cubs finished with 83 wins for the second year in a row. 83-79, the final record. Missing the postseason by one game last year, 6 games out this year. Despite the same record in consecutive years, I think the 2024 Cubs team was clearly better. I will start with a call-up and development of Pete Crow Armstrong. Not an official stat, but he brings an element of fun every game. It's just so much fun to watch him do his thing. He is so impressive, so fast, and so skilled. His ability to cover so much ground defensively in center field, his amazing ability to steal bases seemingly at will. He didn't even play half the season, and he still had almost 30 steals. Cody Bellinger segued to right field late in the year, and he may opt out of his contract during the offseason. We will see. The emergence of PCA showing that the Cubs don't have to worry about center field. That is locked down for sure. We've heard about the strength of the Cubs farm system for years. PCA finally delivers. We finally actually get to see someone from that farm system move up and succeed at the major league level. Bullpen, outside of Adbert Alzolai's continued implosions in April, and then the roller coaster of emotions that came with every Hector Neris closing appearance, I say the bullpen was improved. That was apparent from June on. A lot of close games that were not getting away from the Cubs. I'd say the first year of Michael Busch at first base was a big improvement from 2023. Busch acquired last offseason from the Dodgers. They simply just didn't have room for him in Los Angeles to contribute consistently. Busch did contribute for the Cubs, and it seemed like he got much better as the year went on. Seemed to get more comfortable defensively there at first base, and he proved to be a valuable left-handed bat as well. He's only going to continue to get better, and hopefully manager Craig Counsell will be more comfortable in playing him against left-handed pitching. It was really disappointing, even in September, to see Patrick Wisdom continue to get at-bats against lefties in place of Michael Busch when Busch is clearly the better hitter. A few other notes and observations. Dansby Swanson ending the year as the player we hoped he would be, at least in terms of contact, some situational hitting. Of course, his defense has been stellar throughout the year. His power is still lacking, but there's no denying Swanson's bat coming alive. The last 2.5 months of the season was a big spark for this team. Seiya Suzuki is best suited as designated hitter. His plate performance really improved the last few weeks of the season while DHing. And we don't have to worry about his occasional defensive lapses. Nico Hoerner continues to deliver. I love that he's a guy who came up through the Cubs system. He's fun to watch defensively. He's a solid contact hitter. He's good on the base paths as well. I just wish he had more power. And I do wonder if Nico is part of the 2025 Cubs roster. And I say this from the fact that the Cubs don't have that many attractive pieces in a trade environment. I think Nico is one who does bring value to a lot of other teams in Major League Baseball, and the Cubs desperately need power in the lineup. So I think Nico Hoerner, maybe a prospect, could get packaged together and flipped for a definitive power bat. I'm not saying trade these guys for additional prospects. Cubs do not need any more prospects. They need someone with a proven power bat. Michael Busch has experience playing second base if need be. Let's see. I'm still concerned about the catcher spot. Miguel Amaya, is he ready? Certainly didn't look it in the first half of the season. However, he and Christian Bethancourt had a pretty solid showing in the second half, both offensively and behind the plate. Not going to lie, I would love to see another starter. Steele, Imanaga, and Tyone are a solid 1-2-3. I don't feel good about the rotation after that. Would like to see someone who's, at least a mid-level guy at number 4. I'm not overly sold on Javier Assad, and we just don't know enough about a lot of these other young guys. Can they stay healthy? Can they be effective over the span of an entire year? Like Ben Brown, Caleb Killian, a couple others come to mind. Jed Hoyer with his season-ending press conference today, I believe it's noon Eastern, likely we'll get some insight into his thinking as the Cubs head in to the offseason. We are seeing movement with the Cubs coaching staff. Remember, Craig Counsell was signed by the Cubs in early November last year. He mainly retained the staff of David Ross. So I think as the Cubs enter year 2 of the Craig Counsell era, we will see even more of his influence on the organization, more of his philosophy, more of his people. Notably, first base coach Mike Napoli has been let go. Not totally surprised because his name has come up as a guy who may get a shot at a managerial opportunity, perhaps even this offseason, or another opportunity with another staff. Keep in mind, David Ross could return to managing in 2025. And I wouldn't be surprised if Ross does return, he would bring in Napoli and some of his other familiar faces to his staff wherever he ends up. Assistant hitting coach Jim Adducci and bullpen coach Darren Holmes also let go. Same story for a couple members of the Cubs strength and conditioning staff. News and notes from around Major League Baseball. This is our This and That segment. Luis Arraez ended up as the National League batting champion, a couple points ahead of Shohei Ohtani. Interesting that Arraez becomes the first player ever to win 3 straight batting titles with 3 different teams. The Detroit Tigers ended their 10-year postseason drought this season. You may remember the Cubs and Tigers played in late August. Both teams a couple games below 500 at that time. Tigers finishing the year on a tear, finishing 10 games over 500, taking the second wild card spot in the American League. A really fun story and an example of what some of us were hoping the Cubs were going to pull off in the National League. Flip side of that, an epic collapse in Minneapolis. The Twins lost 26 of their final 38. I believe their postseason odds in late August were projected to be north of 90%, and instead the Twins will not be playing in October. And finally, the Chicago White Sox confirming their spot as the worst team in the modern era, 121 losses. Although, to their credit, they did finish by winning 5 of 6, a very strange ending to a really bad year on the south side of Chicago. Typically, at this point in the podcast, we segue to what's ahead for the Chicago Cubs, the next series or 2. We give you a preview. No series to preview for a while with the offseason upon us, but a couple other dates worth mentioning. The Cubs convention is slated for the 3rd weekend of January, for spring training game February 20th, and the season opener is March 18 in Tokyo. Interesting schedule for the Cubs. 2 games there in Tokyo with the Dodgers, then they come back and have a handful of spring training games, and then have more regular season action picking up in Arizona and Sacramento. I believe the Cubs will be the first visiting team against the A's as the Athletics begin a 3-year stint in Sacramento before moving on to Las Vegas. Cubs home opener scheduled for April 4th. Let's take a quick look at the postseason getting underway today. Tigers at Astros at 2:30 Eastern this afternoon. Kansas City at Baltimore at 4. In the National League this evening, it's the Mets at the Brewers and the Braves at the Padres. All of these series will play today, Wednesday, and Thursday if necessary. Yankees and Guardians await the winners of those series in the American League. Phillies and Dodgers await in the National League. I think the Phillies are coming out of the National League. The AL is tough. I could easily see the Yankees, but I think the Guardians will do it. Having seen both Philly and Cleveland in person, I think the Guardians are the better team. So I'm going to say the Guardians will take the World Series. Again, for the Chicago Cubs, Jed Hoyer hosting his year-end press conference a bit later today. I'm sure a few nuggets will come from that, some insight into what's ahead for the Cubs this offseason and 2025. On X, Bricks Bleachers, comment and follow. Be sure to subscribe too. We'll have some off-season content for you. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more. All things Chicago Cubs in under 10 minutes. It is the Bricks and Bleachers Podcast.